UFC Tampa. These are the full card predictions and the betting breakdown. It's the last UFC card of the year. I'm very excited to talk about all of the fights. So make sure you guys smash the like button if you're new, subscribe, turn the post notifications on, and share the video too. Also, note I'll be live for the entire UFC Tampa fight card Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. This card is in my city, but my dedication to the fight companions is first priority. Yes, I will be here for the whole thing. Let's get into the fights. Let's start it off. First fight on the card. Ladies going after it. Piera Rodriguez, Josephine Knutsson. I'm going to be picking Josephine Knutsson to win this fight. She's a really talented striker with the base of Muay Thai-esque striking. She's light on her feet. She's got a good bounce. She throws good volume strikes, but is pretty accurate to the target. Now, she's lacked finishing ability. We haven't seen it inside of the UFC, and she's essentially a decision queen, to be honest with you. But I think that's actually effective here against Piera Rodriguez. I'd be a little more worried about her if she was knocking a lot of these lower end girls out, not having proven what happens later in fights, that maybe Piera could steal the fight in the later stage. But I think Knutsson is pretty crafty. She doesn't like giving up position. Even last fight, Julia Pilastri got her down with some takedowns, but she was able to reverse and get on top. Now, granted, she was locked in an arm triangle a bit, but she escaped and got on top to finish the fight. So there's positive takeaways through the dust of competitive moments. On the opposite end with Piera Rodriguez, she is a pretty tricky pressure style fighter. She's got good takedowns and control. She's a bit of a low fight IQ type, okay? I guess to keep it real, she's a bit of an idiot. Last fight, she literally did a full-on headbutt on Ariane Carnelosi when she had the fight won. She rocked her with a front kick, was throwing some ground and pound, got mad, and decides she's in close. She's going to touch the head once and then boom, drop down a headbutt. I don't understand the logic there. Of course, you can say, oh, well, I got caught up in the moment. Listen, that was her 11th pro fight. She's done this enough times to know that you can't headbutt in the damn cage. There's no excuse for it. I thought it was an abysmal display of sportsmanship on her end. And I question Piera Rodriguez in tricky positions. What happens if frustration sets in? She'll wilt. I think that is what I see from her past two fights. Yes, the loss against Ariane Carnelosi wasn't a loss in the traditional sense where she got beat up, but she lost her cool. And I can't rely on somebody like that. I think that Josephine Knutsson is a crafty technician with a pretty legit potential. She's 28 years old. She's at an amazing gym, All Stars Training Center. You see Hamzat Chimaev's been out of there. Originally, Gustafsson was from there, and I'm leaving other names out. This freaking, fighter on this card, Lima, who's also from there. So there's a lot of special talent coming out of that gym, and I think it's a flourishing facility over in Sweden for up-and-comers. And I think Josephine Knutsson is an up-and-comer that has at least, top 20 potential. And I think Piera Rodriguez is going to be tough, but enough of a gap in striking skills and then the grappling competency for Knutsson to be able to deal with Piera Rodriguez. I'm actually curious. Yeah, 93% Knutsson. Wow. Yeah, no love for Piera Rodriguez at all. And that's why she's a pretty big underdog. Now, to be fair to Piera Rodriguez, she isn't an awful wrestler, and Knutsson's been taken down. So it's more so going to come down to, if Knutsson's taken down, can she get back up? I do think her scrambling ability is good, and then I think she's more effective in striking. Rodriguez is a bit stiffer in the stand-up. She does throw hard shots, and she showed good dexterity last time, landing a nice front kick on Ariane Carnelosi, but Carnelosi doesn't have the rhythm and movement that a Josephine Knutsson has. I just think Knutsson is a technically superior fighter who has the gas tank to go long, and I think the mentality as well to take her far in her career. A lot of combat experience if you include the straight striking fights. Minus 400 for an over 2.5. I would say it's a high likelihood of an over because Knutsson yet to get a finish at a high level. Rodriguez, her only finish loss. I mean, I guess she technically got finished by DQ against Carnelosi, but true finish loss. She got locked up in an armbar by Jillian Robertson, but that's not a loss to look at and say, oh, she's trash. Robertson's really good on the ground. But it is a loss to look at and say, okay, Piera Rodriguez is a good grappler, but she's not exceptional. She's not towards the top tier. She was getting whooped whooped by Jillian Robertson on the ground. She's able to take down lesser grapplers for sure and control, but I think Knutsson's a crafty and well-rounded prospect, and I think the gym's going to have her prepared for the Pierre Rodriguez level. So Josephine Knutsson to start the card off with a decision win. Let's keep running. Shout out to Zin as we pop it out. Next fight on the card. Things get interesting at bantamweight here. Davey Grant and Ramon Taveras is a cool fight. I'm going to pick Davey Grant to win. Grant has been on the wrong side of some pretty competitive split decisions in recent years. I mean, you look, right? We got the close decision with Adrian Yanez split, Daniel Marco split. Both guys actually fighting each other on this card. Davey Grant has a knockout win against Jonathan Martinez, who, is a top 15 guy, or close to it. At one point he was. Quality kicker. Holy smokes, the leg kicks are nice. I think Davey Grant can beat Ramon Taveras. Taveras has one UFC fight, and it's a slightly controversial win. The City fight was a contentious decision. There was argument on both sides, but a lot of people felt City deserved it due to volume. But Taveras did bust him up with some big shots. But in the third round, he looked like he was fading a bit, and I think City got that final round. And with Davey Grant, he's got a proven gas tank. He can swing until the very end of the fight. A good pressure-based striking style, but he's deceptive with his stand-up. I think that when you remember Davey Grant, a lot of people will forget that alongside of his decent boxing game, he has really nice kicks. That's an aspect of his game that I like. He throws side kicks. He likes to kick the legs low. He'll throw big kicks up high, and it's not necessarily big knockout kicks, but they're quality kicks to help him manage distance and find his timing. On the inside, Davey Grant's got a bit of pop. I mean, he did knock out Jonathan Martinez recently. I mean, he's got the KO of Louis Smolka, which is not huge. Smolka, also a former flyweight, but still a legit KO. Beat a Sunsao with the badass inverted triangle and the comeback. And then a year and 4 months ago, that Marcos split decision, he was tit for tat with Daniel Marcos, who's one of the most highly touted striking prospects at bantamweight right now. As much as I think Ramon Taveras is a quality talent, his boxing is nice, and he's got good slickness and lateral movement, and he has legit KO power. It's going to be hard to knock out the Brit. Davey Grant's got a good chin. He trains at Syndicate for the most part these days. Gets work in with like Marab and stuff like that. I think that he's going to have the gas tank to deal with Taveras. Don't be shocked if Davey Grant looks to take this to the ground and surprises Taveras with his wrestling ability. I think Davey Grant can win this fight. He's a longtime UFC veteran. He's an Ultimate Fighter finalist. He is 38, but 38 for some is not the same 38 for others, man. Some guys at 38 can still mix it up with some up-and-comers. And you know what? Ramon Taveras is 30 years old. He's a good 30-year-old prospect. But I don't know, man. Knockout loss to City. His other loss on the regional scene was also by knockout. The chin, I don't want to say it's questionable, but in a sense, we have to put a slight question mark around it. And if Davey Grant catches him with a big punch, is he going to fall? I could see Taveras cracking Grant with big shots and Grant rolling with the punch as well and surviving a heavy onslaught and then firing back. I'm going to say Davey Grant's live to win, but put an asterisk over the top of it. It's if Davey Grant isn't showing evidence of a career slowdown. He has been out of the cage for a while, man. It's a factor, okay? He had a fight canceled against Cody Gibson. He withdrew from that fight, right? And that was March of 2024, and then doesn't come back all the way till December. So I'm just saying, Davey Grant could have some ring rust here. But if you talk about skill sets, an on-point Davey Grant should have more tools in the tool shed than a dangerous prospect like Ramon Taveras. And I think the UFC experience for Grant in his ability to perform against these high-level strikers in the past, regardless of outcome, he's done pretty good. And I think it's about time that he takes out one of these striking prospects. And I think Taveras has shown the vulnerability enough so where Grant might be live for a later stage KO here, especially round 3 if Taveras gets tired. Plus 106 for Davey Grant with Taveras at minus 126. Now, looking at the over-under, and under 2.5 is plus 120. I think fight ends inside of the distance is better than plus 120 for the under 2.5, but, we don't have it available yet. That'd be a sweaty over, man. It could end up going all 3 rounds, and I could see Grant stealing the second or third, or second and third, I should say. Taveras probably most live in the first round to do some serious damage, but I think Davey Grant's craftiness is going to be a big factor. I like the ability to mix in kicks alongside of the punches. I like the experience inside of the UFC, and I think he's being overlooked as a slight underdog. We're going to lean towards Davey Grant. He's going to be the prediction, and I think he can beat the up-and-coming Ramon Taveras here in a pretty cool fight. Definitely one of the more underrated fights on the card. Next fight on the card, ladies going after it. We got Miranda Maverick versus Jamie Lynn Horth. I think Miranda Maverick should win this fight. I mean, there's a clear opposition level difference. If you look at what Jamie Lynn Horth has fought in the UFC, it's Haley Cohen, who I predicted would get beaten by Jamie Lynn Horth at the time. And then she loses a close one with Veronica Hardy. Hardy's okay. You know, she's not Miranda Maverick level, though. And then the Ivana Petrovic fight a month ago, I thought she lost that fight watching it. I was like, man, I thought she got outworked a bit there by Petrovic, and I thought that decision was a little Canadian bias. She's making a quick turnaround, jumping in and stepping up in competition by a substantial margin to now fight against Miranda Maverick. I just don't know if this is a great move here. I mean, the only vulnerability with Maverick that you could mention would say, she's a little undersized for this fight here. But Miranda Maverick's a pretty quick enough kickboxer. I don't want to say she's like quick, because then you're going to have this illusion in your mind where she's got crazy slickness. She's not super slick, but she's relatively quick. She's a good athlete overall. She does have decent wrestling. She's fought way more high-level girls, and I feel like Horth has not shown any exceptional area. She has okay pressure striking, okay clinch work and control, but like I said, I thought last time out she could have taken an L. Now jumping in and fighting Miranda Maverick in, Tampa, friggin' month later, she's not going to look better than that fight. Can Miranda Maverick deal with the Jamie Lynn Horth that won a controversial decision against Ivana Petrovic? I feel it's got to be a yes. I mean, Miranda Maverick's a pretty notable contender. I mean, look at the opponents. Diani Barboza, who's a badass striker, okay? And she beat her. Listen, Andrea Lee, say what you want. She's an OG vet. Priscilla Cachoeira, power puncher, dangerous girl. Jazz Davicius beat her. Jazz Davicius is literally a monster in wrestling. She beat Shayna Young, as she should. I think she beat her for like multiple times, but that's Shayna Young level is not there. And then Sabina Mazo, okay, like you look at some of these, they're more can level, but Erin Blanchfield, Macy Barber, she should have won that Macy Barber fight, beat Jillian Robertson. This should be a clear gap in the opposition level, and I think that is why Miranda Maverick should be pretty good to win here. It's a step down in competition from what we've seen recently, even from Diani Barboza, or, arguably even, the older Andrea Lee, Priscilla Cachoeira even. I could see Cachoeira giving Jamie Lynn Horth trouble. I'm going with Miranda Maverick. I think she wins this fight using her grappling game. I think she gets on top of Jamie Lynn Horth. Does she get the finish? I can't confidently say it with these ladies' fights, but, submission of Cachoeira there. She's gotten subs in the past. She could wear on Jamie Lynn Horth and then find a submission in this fight, maybe a rear naked choke, but, I wouldn't throw the bag down on definitely a sub happening unless the plus money, I guess, will be crazy. We don't have props yet. We don't know. Minus 400 for Miranda Maverick with Jamie Lynn Horth at plus 330. So looking towards an over, minus 450. Ladies fight, probably going into the later stage. I think Miranda Maverick can outstrike Jamie Lynn Horth, and then I think she can time some key takedowns, get some control time against the cage, and I think she's pretty live to get a unanimous decision win here. This should be an obvious level difference. And add on top of the fact of all of it, you have, nearly 20 pro fights for Maverick. This is her 20th pro fight. This is the 9th pro fight for Horth, so more than double the experience. And Maverick's 27 and Horth is 34. I'm going to favor Miranda Maverick to pull through and win this fight. She's a young fighter. She's just been in the UFC a damn long time, but her track record is pretty good. 4-1 in her last 5, 3-fight win streak. She should beat Jamie Lynn. Let's keep running. Next fight on the card, we have Miles Johns versus Felipe Lima. I'm going to pick Felipe Lima, but I feel sorry for Miles Johns here, man. He was supposed to fight Cody No Love, okay? And that right there is a massive opportunity to jump up the ranks at bantamweight and really gain some respect. Garbrandt ends up pulling out of the fight. The Cody No Love fight is canceled. Instead of a rebooking, Miles Johns accepts this fight against Felipe Lima. And I made sure to check this and find out if it was true. Featherweight fight. He's fighting at 145 against Felipe Lima. I think that's a mistake as well. Now, Felipe Lima is not a huge 45er. He's actually on paper an inch shorter than Miles Johns. I'm curious to see if that's accurate. We'll find out at the face-offs, because we know with the stats, you don't know for sure how tall anybody really is until you see them go face-to-face. I think that Lima is going to give Miles Johns a lot of trouble here. He's a talented up-and-comer with a very well-versed game. His striking is pretty slick and powerful, and he definitely is going to have a striking speed advantage. On top of that, he also seems to have good grappling and takedown ability, and I feel as though he's a really quality talent to keep an eye on. Another one of these fighters coming out of All-Stars Gym on this card that I think is probably live for a successful fight. Now, you can say, oh, well, Felipe Lima doesn't have that type of experience in the UFC. Sure. But he beat Mohamed Naimov in the debut. Naimov's pretty good. Naimov beat Nathaniel Wood. Naimov knocked out Jamie Malarkey up in weight. Now, to be fair, Lima was a 35er pre-UFC, but now fighting in the UFC at 145, and I am very surprised this fight's going to stay at 45. I checked UFC.com because I was like, no, Tapology probably got this wrong. No, it says 145. So as far as I know, this fight's at 145. If something changes, I'll be sure to update you guys throughout the week. But overall, I think at 45, especially, you got to favor Lima. The argument could be made, oh, if it's at 35, how is Lima going to look with the weight cut? But at 45, he looked damn good against a gritty Naimov who's got power and solid wrestling, and he was able to submit him. Listen, Miles Johns is a solid fighter at 15-2. He's got good looping shots, but dude, he's a decent bantamweight. He's not going to beat a guy like Felipe Lima, especially at 145. Even though Johns has deceptive power, if you really look at his track record, he's no knockout artist. He has thud on his shots, but it's not fight-ending power. It's power that makes you respect him. I think Lima's going to give him a lot of problems, man. As much as I think Johns is talented, Johns has got big looping punches that he throws. He can mix it up fairly well. I don't know, man. Last fight out, too close against Douglas Silva de Andrade. I mean, he beat Cody Gibson. Gibson's okay. Dan Argueta fight obviously was overturned because of the Turinabol drug test that was positive for Miles Johns. Beats Vince Morales, another journeyman top fighter, and then he gets submitted by Castaneda before. Bro, I think Lima's live to win by submission in this fight. I mean, he's a Brazilian fighter. You got to respect the jits on all fronts with these Brazilian savages. He's at All-Stars, which has good grapplers. I think that Miles Johns is going to take a fat L here, and I don't know why he's being punished with this spot here. Like, I really think that he is getting thrown to the wolves in this fight. The UFC's like, hey, prove you still got some. They were giving him a blessed opportunity against Cody Garbrandt, where if he won, he could have a legit argument to then fight in the top 15. Now you're at 145, fighting a talented up-and-comer like Felipe Lima. I just don't think it makes any sense. This matchmaking is abysmal, and I really don't like it for Miles Johns. I guess you can say it's abysmal because I like Miles Johns. I've picked Miles Johns a lot in the past. I've DM'd Miles Johns. We're going to have him do a damn interview, but I can't do it now after picking against him. It's just how the game goes, though. Miles Johns is in a bad spot. And, I mean, it's great matchmaking for Lima because he's going to be on the fast track. If he goes out there and submits Miles Johns, especially if he's going to drop back down to 135, not even fighting in the weight class, he's going to come in with a lot of hype and shit. In 2025, you could end up getting somebody in the top 15 with a win here, especially if it's impressive. I'm picking Lima. He's a great talent. He's somebody to watch. But, damn, no love for Miles Johns at all, UFC. What did he do to the matchmakers? What the hell, man? Cody Garbrandt pulls out, but he's punished. That's what I'm seeing here. Plus 205 for Johns. Lima, minus 240. Now, if Miles Johns somehow goes through the fire, pulls through, and upsets Felipe Lima, all of what I'm saying is going to be, thrown right back in my face in a sense. And it's like, damn, well, Miles Johns was willing to take that fight and prove it. But if you look at what Lima brings to the table, I don't think that's easy for Miles Johns. Hard to say. A win over Naimov means a lot to me for Felipe Lima. And I just think at 145 especially, I got to favor him. Minus 275 for the over. It's live to go over, but Lima could be a live submission play. I don't know what that sub line is going to end up looking like later on in the week, so I'm excited to see when the props all drop, but he's got crafty subs. Subs Naimov, that's no easy task, man. It's a good win against Mohamed Naimov, in my opinion. And you can see, I mean, finishes here, some decisions. He's gone long with some lesser fighters in the past. So could be a decision here against Miles Johns. But weird that this fight's at 145. Miles Johns getting slightly screwed by the UFC matchmaking wise, going from Cody No Love, an OG and former champ, to an up and coming guy who's got just one UFC fight. And at 145. Shit, not fair for Johns, man. Unfortunate. But Felipe Lima should win. I will pick him against Miles Johns. Sorry, Chapo. Next fight on the card, we have Sean Woodson versus Fernando Padilla. I think Fernando Padilla is live to chin Sean Woodson. I'm going to pick Fernando Padilla. And I think that some of you guys are going to come at me and say I'm crazy, but take a second and look at what Padilla has done in certain fights. He's shown good striking. And you can say, oh, well, Kyle Nelson and him, he ends up losing that fight. Yes, he did. But I don't know. I'm giving him more the benefit of the doubt. I think, it could have ended up being more of an off performance. He was still in the fight, mixing it up late. It's just the timing wasn't there. He's only 27. I mean, I guess he's almost 28. He's a young prospect on the come up right now. And I think that Padilla is being given this opportunity, which didn't make a lot of sense to me with the matchmaking. This card's matchmaking is making me scratch my head a little bit. Didn't make sense. I didn't expect it after Padilla's last win and Woodson's last win. But I think it's maybe because Padilla being, a Mexican up-and-comer is getting a little bit of that push. And this is a favorable matchup for him. I mean, yeah, you're going to see Woodson with 2 inches in reach, but that's not a crazy reach advantage for Woodson, who does a good job of moving and striking from distance and mixing up punch combinations. But, if you look closely at his recent wins, Alex Caceres, crafty OG veteran, but not known for much power or finishing ability with his hands. A guy that can touch you up with good multi-shot combinations, mixing grappling. A well-versed fighter, but also at the tail end of his career. Okay. Charles Jourdain split decision. It was super close, and Jourdain's now at bantamweight. Dennis Bazooka win. Yes, it was clean, but at the end of the day, Dennis Bazooka, not high caliber, got knocked out by Jamal Emmers quick. And then this Luis Saldana fight, which I think a lot of people forget about. It got kind of pushed under the rug a bit because Luis Saldana is no longer with the UFC. A draw where if you look back at the first round, Sean Woodson was violently dropped once, right? And I think if Saldana would have thrown ground and pound, he probably would have got a knockout stoppage. Instead, he tries to do a walk-off KO. Then he's dropped the second time, and Saldana throws an illegal knee. And then the ref steps in. Saldana thought he won the fight, but it was obviously point deduction. Woodson is able to come back and win that decision, or rather draw. I guess in a sense, it's like a win. If you get knocked out and then you draw after, that's kind of a win. But the way that I look at things with this fight, and I really think a lot about it, I say, Sean Woodson, yes, he's a clean striker, doesn't have a lot of power. Dealing with a guy who has good pressure in Padilla, I've seen Woodson show a vulnerability to right hands over the top. Even though he's slick and he has a boxing base, he's hittable and he doesn't have a lot of power. We have a good chinned Mexican fighter on the opposite side. It just seems to me like this could end up being a really tricky matchup for Woodson, rather, and a good matchup for Padilla. Going off on a rant over here. I'm going to pick Fernando Padilla to pull off the upset, and it won't blow my mind if he drops Sean Woodson and potentially finishes him. I think he's a guy that's improving drastically, and I have to say, you can't overlook, Fernando Padilla's potential. Okay, he's shown a lot of it, and I feel as though it's coming together. I believe he's training with Colin Oyama, and I think that's, a relatively good team. Not saying Sean Woodson's team is bad, but more of a lesser-known team over in St. Louis. I feel like Padilla's crafty, man. He's well-versed. He's got solid striking. He's got a bit of power. He's got good dexterity. I know he's hittable at times, and I'm sure Sean Woodson's going to crack him with some good shots, and he's got good movement. But Padilla with Mexican pressure, those Mexican pressure fighters, they land a big right hand. I can see Sean Woodson going down. I can see a big upset taking place. Woodson really shouldn't even have to fight Padilla, but he's being thrown a dangerous matchup, stylistically speaking. I'm going to go Padilla for the upset. I think he's being slept on. Nobody's picking him, which surprised me. I really felt like going into this Kyle Nelson fight that Padilla could be like a special talent on the come up. I was a big Padilla guy. And I'm like, okay, he lost to Kyle Nelson, but let's take a step back and chill. He beats Puello easily, who was 8-1, but there's levels to the game. Now they're giving him another big fight. I think Padilla still has top 15 potential. He's a dangerous striker with knockout ability. Don't forget he knocked out Julian Erosa. And didn't Erosa catch Sean Woodson in a sub early in his UFC career? Of course he did. Not saying use MMA math, but interesting. I'm saying Padilla pulls off the upset here. And the odds, I think, are wrong. They have Woodson around minus 170, Padilla around plus 145. He's a gritty Mexican fighter with pretty good speed and accuracy and knockout ability. I think Padilla's live for a surprising upset here against Sean Woodson. Over 2.5 is minus 240. I think it's live to go under. I'm going to say Padilla's a good underdog. I'm picking him as an underdog. I think he's winning this fight. I'm surprised that the odds, I guess I'm not, you know what, take it back. When you look at the style of fight, I'm not surprised, or I am surprised rather of the odds. But when you look at the name value, I'm not surprised of the odds. You get what I'm saying? Like if you look on paper, Woodson, who he's beaten recently, top 15 essentially, versus Padilla, crafty up-and-comer, but lost to, Kyle Nelson, which, to be fair, the Kyle Nelson loss isn't horrible. Duho Choi had a draw with him. Look how good Choi looked against Landwehr, and I know the point deduction and whatnot, but still, you get where I'm coming from. I think Padilla can win this fight against Sean Woodson and pull off a big upset. And I will pick Padilla for the upset win. I think he's live for the knockout. It wouldn't shock me if he gets a decision. I do think he's live, especially for a knockdown in this fight. Fernando Padilla to take out Sean Woodson for a nice upset on the prelims. Let's keep running up the card. Next fight on it, we have Drakkar Klose versus Yoel Alvarez. You have to pick Yoel Alvarez here, man. Crafty guy, long, rangy, dangerous with knees, elbows, good front kicks up the center. I've underrated Alvarez's striking in the past, and I will not do that any longer because he does have good Muay Thai, and he is slick, and he is precise, and he has crazy long reach. 7-inch reach advantage. 77-inch reach to 70-inch reach. 6'3" to 5'9". Striking from range is Alvarez all day. Get him in the green zone, it's green all day, okay? He's going to be touching up close from a range that Klose just can't get close to him, okay? But when you look at the fight on the inside, how does it go? I do think Klose could get counter-shotted in the clinch, and if they tie up and Klose looks to grapple, I really think Alvarez will be live for a submission before they hit the mat. You could potentially see Klose looking to drag him to the floor, and then Alvarez throwing up maybe a ghillie, maybe a darce, depending on the position, maybe an anaconda. Drakkar Klose last fight, let's not forget, he was rocked really bad against Joaquim Silva. And he was locked in a tight ghillie by Silva as well. I just take those as red flags in a fight against an up-and-coming guy like Yoel Alvarez, whose last loss came against Arman Tsarukyan. Really, it's not a bad loss. Tsarukyan's fighting for the belt. He's one of the top lightweights on the damn planet. Alvarez is trending upward and on his way to the top 15. He's talented. He whooped Elvis Brenner last time. Before that, he submitted Mark Jacasey. I think that Alvarez is live for a submission here. Listen, respect to Drakkar Klose, though, because he is 7-1 in his last 8 fights. And last time out, I mean, he did beat Joaquim Silva. Regardless of the close moments, he deserved the win at the end of it. Beat Joe Solecki with the slam knockout, win over Rafa Garcia. Like, the recent 3 wins are decent, but they're not Yoel Alvarez level of skill. They're not Yoel Alvarez frame either, okay? He's dealing with a guy that's 6'3" in the damn lightweight division and moves well for having that size and doesn't show chin issues either. I think Yoel Alvarez is live. Very live. I think he's going to probably get a submission in this fight. And I think he's going to beat Drakkar Klose. And I feel like you have to give him a fight in the top 15 if he beats Drakkar. Minus 350 for Yoel Alvarez with Drakkar at plus 285. I think there's a good chance that Alvarez wins, man. The striking game, I favor Alvarez from distance. Grappling, I think Alvarez has the sub chance. The one area where you could say Klose has an advantage would be pure wrestling, but what can you do with the wrestling? I don't think he can do much. He's going to take down Alvarez, take his back and choke him out. He's going to beat the shit out of him with ground and pound and finish him. I don't think so. I'm going Yoel Alvarez to sub Drakkar Klose. I think he's live to hurt him and then club and sub him. I think he's live to potentially just knock him out, or he could use crafty submission skills to just find a sub. Yoel Alvarez should win. The under's minus 155. I think so too. I expect a violent fight. I expect a fun fight, and I expect a Joel Alvarez fight. We're going Joel Alvarez for the W. Big range advantage here. Also, the younger guy with the promise on the come up versus Klose, who's a crafty vet, an underrated vet, but here, a beatable vet. Alvarez for the W. Let's keep running. Next fight on the card. It brings us to our featured prelim of the night. We have Michael Johnson versus Ottman Azaitar. I mean, you know who I have to pick. I'm going to pick Michael Johnson, obviously, but I am always nervous picking Michael Johnson. I'm especially nervous backing Michael Johnson, right? Just the truth about Michael Johnson here is he is a super talented guy, but he's just susceptible to weird shit happening in fights and him losing. I mean, bro, he's 22-19. His skill set, when you would watch him throw and you watch good moments from his fights, you would assume that he had a much better record than that. But unfortunately, he's, a journeyman essentially. He did have a prime at one point, beating guys like Edson Barboza, Dustin Poirier. He fought Habib. But if you look at, recent years, it's win-loss, win-loss. I mean, last time out, he got a win over Darius Flowers, clean W, took out a guy that just simply wasn't his level, to be fair. Fight before that, Diego Ferreira chins him. It was like, damn, Diego Ferreira just knocked him out. The jiu-jitsu guy chins him. But then Ferreira went out and beat Mateusz Rebecki. That loss don't look so bad now. Win over Mark Jacasey. Easy work at Jacasey. Dominated him. Controversial loss to Malarkey. The Alan Patrick fight, he knocked him out. So, in my world, he's 4-1 in his last 5 fights, and he's fighting Ottman Azaitar, who I think is essentially a can. Azaitar's one UFC win is against Kama Worthy, who also was very much known for a glass jaw, especially later in his run. And then Matt Frivola absolutely wrecks him when they fought. Francisco Prado absolutely wrecks him. He threw like a spin elbow, beat the hell out of him. I really think that Michael Johnson should get a W in this fight. This has to be a Michael Johnson home state showcase type of fight. He's in Florida. He's at home. He's in his comfort zone. He shouldn't be losing to Ottman Azaitar. He should be able to box his face off, use that slick southpaw stance to find the counter shot KO. But somehow there is a chance that Michael Johnson gets caught with the most random looping eyes closed punch or some crazy back fist and gets dusted. Because unfortunately, that just kind of happens sometimes in Michael Johnson fights. But I don't think so here. Skill set wise, he's levels above Ottman Azaitar. I don't think Azaitar is good. I don't think Azaitar is bottom end UFC level even. I think he's on his way out. He's kind of a chinny power striking brawler who likes to throw big hooks, but looks like a sitting duck, stiff down the center. Like you can rip nice straight shots on him. And then you get Michael Johnson, who at one point chin Dustin Poirier. It's got to be Johnson. I refuse to believe otherwise. Michael Johnson for the knockout win. He makes easy work of Ottman Azaitar. That's what should happen. As far as the odds, -175 for Johnson. Skill set wise, he should be a 4-1 favorite, but it's Michael Johnson, so it makes sense why it's only -175. Azaitar at +150. Michael Johnson's going to win. Michael Johnson's going to knock him out. He has to knock him out. This would be tragic if he lost. At least tragic for me. I don't know about you guys. I don't know how many people are, still Michael Johnson fans anymore. Or Michael Johnson fans, bro. I don't know. Holy hell. We'll see. -175, under 2.5, probably. I think Michael Johnson gets a highlight reel here. He should wreck Ottman. I don't think Azaitar's good. And that's not me trying to shaft him and say, just negative things to hype up the Florida dude, okay? I'm just being real. Ottman Azaitar leaves a lot of things to be desired. There's a lot of openings down the center with him. He's a brawler, and he's fighting a guy that when he lands, he can do serious damage. And if he's on point, he's going to thrive. I'm saying Michael Johnson for the knockout win and, keeps things going a little better. Gets maybe a 2-fight win streak going. That'd be nice for him. Let's keep running. Let's jump to our main card opener. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you smash the like button if you're enjoying. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We got Navajo Stirling versus Tuco Tokkos. I think Navajo Stirling is going to absolutely run over Tokkos here. It's a hard sell on Tokkos. I mean, he's got okay striking and he's got okay grappling, but there's really no area of exceptionality with him where I'm like, wow, okay, he's good at that. Write that down. It's more, okay, he's generally skilled everywhere. He trains at Killcliff FC. I'm sure he spars with some of the better guys there and whatnot. But I don't know. He's got a Muay Thai-esque stance, but he's stiff down the center and heavy on his feet. I think Navajo Sterling has a clear striking advantage. He's way slicker. He's way lighter on his feet. He's way rangier. He's way more powerful. He's way more accurate. He's just simply better. Navajo Sterling in striking is levels above Tokkos. The only area where there could be a potentially worry if, yeah, maybe Tokkos gets him down somehow. Maybe Tokkos snatches up a neck, takes his back and chokes. I don't think so, man. I can't see it. Sterling trains at City Kickboxing. Those guys have quality takedown defense for the most part. He's in the room with Adesanya and Carlos Ulberg. Navajo Sterling is going to win this fight, and he should absolutely run right through Tokkos on his way to a highlight reel knockout. He had that nice win against Lato on the Damn Contender Series, violent check hook KO. I think he's live for a violent KO here. If you look at Tokkos' fights against, UFC fighters as of late, Umar Sai, submission loss. He got ran over there. And then on the road to UFC, Ming Yang Zhang wrecked him. Now, to be fair, though, Ming Yang Zhang is a savage prospect, and he's got big power in his hands, and he's somebody to watch. But it shows Tokkos getting hit with big punches by a good striker live to go down. We've seen it before. I think we'll see it again. I think Navajo Sterling is going to run right through Tokkos. So Navajo Sterling for the W in impressive fashion, and I think he's going to slice Tokkos in half, bro. He's going to slice him up. Not a close fight. It should be one-way traffic. Minus 600 for Navajo Sterling. He is at a massive favorite status line, but it makes sense. He's got a lot of hype on him right now, coming from the Contender Series and getting such an impressive win there. I'm not surprised at the overly inflated line. I do think he wins the fight, but the odds obviously suck. Plus 425 for Tokkos. Now, if you're looking towards the side of an over 1.5, minus 155, under plus 125, I mean, you're kind of just playing with the coin and flipping it for an over-under. But for some reason, I feel like I favor Navajo to catch him earlier. I think Tokkos might get a little reckless on the feet, even overly pressure wrestling. Sterling's going to defend and then probably find some counter shots and get a nice KO. So I think Navajo Sterling to pull through violently is going to be a confident call to start off this main card. Sterling should win it. Yes, he's a chalky favorite. Of course he is. He's a highlight reel Contender Series winner. And I think another highlight reel knockout incoming, and I'm excited for violence here. Let's keep running. Next fight on the card, we have Daniel Marcos versus Adrian Yanez. I'm going to be picking Daniel Marcos over Adrian Yanez. I was a big Adrian Yanez fan coming up, and I still love his style. I'm not saying, I'm not a fan because he lost, but I do have questions about how he will fare against a tactical kickboxer like Marcos. It's just hard to say how much Adrian Yanez has kind of shored up those weaknesses when his only recent fight is against Vinicius Salvador, who's an absolute can. Adrian Yanez, in his, run up the ranks, right, when things were looking good, clean knockout power, good boxing for sure, nice slickness, right? What he's shown as a potential vulnerability to his game is he is very hittable with jabs. We saw Rob Font just piecing him up essentially with straight shots, wrecked him there. We saw him struggle with jabs from Randy Costa in a win earlier in his UFC run. And then he took on Jonathan Martinez and his legs got ripped to shreds. Now, to be fair to Adrian Yanez, Jonathan Martinez is the best leg kicker in the bantamweight division. He absolutely destroys legs. And even the last fight he lost with McGee, he wrecked McGee's legs. And if that was a 5-round fight, Martinez is winning it by leg kick TKO. So we'll give him a little bit of, credit on the side of it's just a guy with masterful leg kicks. But to be fair, Daniel Marcos is a good kicker too. He rips nice leg kicks. He has good front kicks up the center. The question mark about Daniel Marcos is going to be how does he fare in boxing range with Yanez? He typically does have decent boxing, and he's able to shift his way out of range pretty well with good mobility. He's a 16-0 up-and-comer and hasn't shown the chink in the armor yet. Does have a win over Davey Grant as well, which you got to respect, as does Yanez. Competitive fight, both getting split decisions over Davey Grant, who's also on this card, as I mentioned earlier. And I'm looking at Marcos' last fight. Beat a gritty John Castaneda, who brought a pressure wrestling threat. I think Marcos has more weapons. I think Yanez is probably better with hooks. Pure power punching, I favor Yanez, but this isn't boxing. And in an MMA fight, we have Marcos, who I would say has the mobility advantage, simply better footwork and movement. He's a better striker from the green zone, to be fair. From distance, he definitely has an edge. In the yellow zone, I also think he'll have a slight advantage. Now, when it gets in close, that is Yanez's world, and Yanez is going to need to be able to find ways to close the gap on Marcos, put pressure on him, make him uncomfortable, and land big punch combinations in close range. But Marcos, with the footwork that he has, a hard guy to track down and just blitz and bully. I don't think that's going to be easy to do. Also, with Yanez's vulnerabilities of, against jabs in the past, right? Jabs giving him some issues. Marcos, I don't think has an awful jab. He can adopt, snapping jab and move while he works front kicks up the center, rips to the legs, stays using lateral movement as Yanez tries to track him down. And then as you add up rounds, right, and Marcos is chopping at the leg, throwing the stiff jab, busting the nose up, working some teeps up the center, that assume Yanez slows down. Marcos has more success in striking. Yanez then may look to wrestle. Marcos has very good hips. His takedown defense is seemingly pretty good. I feel as though Daniel Marcos is simply a more well-refined fighter, whereas Yanez's chance to win is going to simply be the puncher's chance. Does he have the knockout ability? For sure. Would it be badass to see Adrian Yanez catch Daniel Marcos with a huge punch, flatline him, and get the hype back on his side? Absolutely. The likelihood of that happening, I just don't see it likely enough for me to predict it. So I'm going Daniel Marcos, and I think he probably wins this fight by a decision. I would assume so, as I think I turned my mouse off over here. What am I doing? Oh, maybe it died on me. No way. Oh, we still got it. Okay. That was disappointing. For a second, I was like, no way. I was like, wait, is that bad luck? Is that us, the universe telling us take a second? Let's take a second, actually, because we had that second. I'm still picking Daniel Marcos. Yanez could catch him, but I'm not just going off puncher's chance, man. I'm going with the tactical fighter, and I think that Daniel Marcos can edge out a decision and probably touch up Yanez from distance. It wouldn't be crazy for him to pull off a sick knockout. It wouldn't blow my mind, but he hasn't been doing that against anybody good yet. For the most part, he picks people apart. He stays moving. He's on that bicycle a lot, and he's hard to track down. And I think Daniel Marcos beats Adrian Yanez. Now, as far as the odds, Yanez at plus 145. He's a pretty big underdog here. Marcos minus 170. I guess not pretty big. Relatively large is a better term. Over 2.5 minus 120. Very live to go into the later stages. I do think that over is live. I don't necessarily love it because there is a finishing factor in the fight. Yanez finished, in his last two fights. He's been touched up before. Marcos is a good round winner, but has finishes too. I don't know. I think Marcos by decision, though. Over 2.5 minus 120. Not a confident call, but I lean towards Marcos on the judges' scorecards. I lean towards Marcos on the bicycle, picking Yanez apart. So the pick is going to be Daniel Marcos over Adrian Yanez. Fun fight on this main card between bantamweights, and I expect some high-level striking techniques, but I got to go with the technician over the power brawler. Let's keep running. Next fight on the card, we got light heavyweights going after it. We got Dustin Jacoby versus Vitor Petrino. This is actually a dope light heavyweight fight. I'm picking Vitor Petrino. Dustin Jacoby is not going to kill the hype of Petrino. It's not going to happen. And I know some pundits will say, damn, bro, but Anthony Smith beat him. Look how bad Anthony Smith has looked. Okay. I'm going to stand here and say something, though. We have to look at how that fight unfolded. Petrino was doing well in striking, decided to get overly confident, blast the double leg, and pick Anthony Smith up, literally putting himself into the gilly. And then he gets tapped out. Dustin Jacoby isn't known for any bit of submission threat. So to be fair, even if Petrino learned nothing from the Smith fight and goes out and does that exact same thing, he's going to take Jacoby down, and he's going to control him from top position because Jacoby doesn't bring submission skills to the game. This is not part of his skill set. He is a kickboxer. He fought in glory. He likes striking, decent from distance, okay jab, powerful straight punch, but ultimately dealing with a guy who has a physical strength advantage by a long margin, a wide margin, I guess would be a better term, has a wrestling edge, a grappling edge, and a power punching advantage. I would say Jacoby from distance, technically more sound for sure. He's more clean than Petrino is at striking, but it doesn't always come down to your technical abilities in fights, especially in the heavier weight classes. Petrino does have legit knockout power, but I don't necessarily feel as though he's just striking in this fight with Dustin Jacoby. Does he have the ability to catch Jacoby with a big punch and put him out? For sure. Dustin Jacoby's been knocked out. Dustin Jacoby got chin last time, but it was against Dom Reyes, who still got some fight left in him. He showed that this past weekend. Fight before that, Alonzo Menafield badly dropped Dustin Jacoby. But mixing it up in striking is competitive, right? Petrino could get caught up with a jab on the outside and a big straight, but then he throws some power hook bombs and counter shots Jacoby. Could happen. But I think he's going to press. I think Petrino is going to press Jacoby against the cage. I think Petrino is going to look to pick him up and take him down. And I do think Petrino is going to have success using wrestling here. Petrino, even though in a technical sense, he is not a high caliber wrestler, right? Not your traditional wrestling style. As far as wrestling in fights, he does have a good ability at taking fighters down. He's crazy strong, he's crazy athletic, and he's crazy explosive. And that works to his favor where he doesn't need perfect technique on these takedowns to get the fight to the floor. Now, if you look at what he brings to the table from top position, he has solid jiu-jitsu. He's good from top. He's got submission threats that he brings. I think Petrino will be live to win via submission against Dustin Jacoby, but I won't be shocked either if he goes out and wins kind of a mad decision. Like it could be pressure grappling, takedown control, clinch work, Jacoby not giving up dominant position, but still stuck in bottom half guard, gets it back to guard, Petrino on top, accepts position, throws a bit of ground and pound. There's a chance that Petrino gets dud-like decision win. Now, that's not going to be a hope. As a fan, I would much rather see Petrino run right over Jacoby, pick him up, slam him, and finish him with ferocious ground and pound, or potentially rear naked choke him, or arm triangle him, or catch him with a big looping shot. That'd be better. But being realistic, I have reservations about Petrino's skill set. I think that he is better than Jacoby so obviously in grappling that the best path to go towards will be the path of the least resistance, which is going to be Petrino mixing and grappling. That's the strategy. Path of least resistance. Petrino, looking for takedowns, get him down, beat him up. Control him, win time, and probably win the fight. I think Petrino's live to win for sure. I'd be surprised if Petrino sold against Jacoby. I don't think Dustin Jacoby's knocking him out. I think Petrino's pretty powerful and has a good chin. And I think even if things get testy on the feet and he gets caught with something, the potential threat of landing takedowns is a big factor. And I don't think Jacoby has the grappling defense to deal with Petrino. Now, Jacoby's a plus 250 underdog, and I think for good reason here. He's seemingly towards the tail end of his run, whereas Petrino is just now emerging in the rankings. And then it's minus 300 for Petrino on the opposite side. I think Vitor Petrino wins. Over 1.5 minus 170. It's a scary over 1.5 because of how terrifying Petrino's build is, and the chance of a devastating knockout against a Dustin Jacoby is always live. But historically, Dustin Jacoby has not been any bit chinny. I mean, he's been hurt in fights before, but he's not a chinny fighter. I mean, if you look at his run, he's been knocked out 2 times, right? Dom Reyes knocked him out. And then before that, he hadn't been knocked out in MMA with punches on the feet. I mean, granted, it was ground and pound against King Mo. So historically, going longer, Azamat Murzakev decision. To be honest, a lot of people thought he beat Khalil Roundtree. Knocked out in Zetshiku, dropped by Alonzo Menafield, but not finished. You see why I'm kind of thinking Petrino's live to win on the scorecards? So I'm going to say Vitor Petrino decision in this fight here. Could end up locking up a submission, but, you know, I don't know. He's a raw talent. He's a raw talent still. Is everybody picking him by KO? Yeah, the masses are like, yo, Petrino by KO. I would love to see it. It will definitely escalate the stock more substantially if Petrino finds the KO, but just don't be surprised if he wins the decision. Either way, confidently, you have to pick Petrino here. Next fight on the card, we have Manel Kape versus Bruno Silva. I'm going to pick Manel Kape to beat Bruno Silva. I think he's pretty substantially better as far as technical kickboxing goes, as far as his ability to be elusive as well. Bruno Silva was getting touched pretty clean by Durden a bit on the feet. And obviously, he landed the counter shot, dropped Durden, and finished him. But ultimately, he did get touched and was losing that fight. Also, the wrestling of Durden was a big factor. Manel Kape has a striking slickness advantage. He's going to have a striking speed advantage, too. He's better from distance. He's just a lot faster on his feet, and he's a lot faster with his striking. He's honestly just a more mobile fighter than than Silva. I'm thinking of Vitor Petrino still. I can't get the other Brazilian out of my damn mind here. Silva on the opposite side, I mean, he's got, decent karate-esque kickboxing, holds more of that karate stance for the most part. Solid enough movement, hard right hands, decent enough grappling skills, good jiu-jitsu, to be honest with you. He's not a bad fighter. I don't know, though. He gets hit a lot, man. He's hittable. And if you look, I mean, beating Durden is cool, but, he was losing moments in the fight. Before that, Tyson Nam KO, or submission, rather. Victor Rodriguez win, JP Bays. Like, 3 of the 4 are not really good wins. Manel Kape, you got to put respect on his name. Gave Mokaev some trouble in a weird fight. Felipe Dos Santos win, and that was probably his worst performance. David Dvorak decision, beat Zalga Zumagullo by finish, finished O'Day. I think Manel Kape is live to win a decision here with Bruno Silva. He's going to be cleaner and faster to the target, and I think his striking is going to be the ultimate difference maker. He's better from distance. He's going to be able to close the gap quicker. I think he catches Bruno with some solid shots. Hard to say, Kape by KO. It's a flyweight fight. Bruno Silva's pretty durable. I think probably Manel Kape wins by unanimous decision here against Bruno. Now, he's a minus 325 favorite, so very wide line for the side of Kape, but deservingly so. With a win against Bruno Silva, with the state of the flyweight division and Pantoja being such a dominant champ, Kape is like not out of the realm of possibility for a rematch. When was their fight? They fought all the way back in 2021 in the debut. Isn't that crazy, bro? Ex-Ryzen fighter to the UFC. Pantoja welcomes him here and beat him. He's beating all these damn Ryzen fighters. I think Manel Kape wins the fight. He's still in the mix for sure, and Bruno Silva's not a guy that's in the mix. 34 years old, quality as far as flyweights go for sure, but not elite. And I think Manel Kape is more towards the elite tier, and I think he's going to outstrike Bruno Silva, fend off any potential grappling attempts, land the cleaner and more powerful shots, and take home most likely a unanimous decision win. We're going Kape for the W over Bruno Silva. Let's keep running up. Let's jump to the co-main event of the evening. We got Cub Swanson and Billy Quarantillo. Tampa Bay's own Billy Q fighting at home. That's pretty cool. But I think Cub Swanson is live to beat him. I know he's fighting at home, and that's what everybody wants to hear, right? The hometown hero gets the W. Listen, I'll say he gives a tough fight to Cub Swanson. But even though Cub Swanson's last fight on paper is a loss to Andre Fili, when you sit down and look at that fight, it could have went either way. It could have went towards Cub. Cub was clean and slick with his stand-up. Cub still can box his ass off. He's way slicker at striking than Billy Q. So then I asked myself, okay, with this matchup, where would Billy Q have a potential advantage? On paper, you could say maybe wrestling, maybe, but Cub Swanson has good hips, and he's quick on his feet. He's hard to get a hold of. Okay, so Cub Swanson, not really easy to out-wrestle. Billy Q in jiu-jitsu, but he's going to pull guard? No. Is he going to jump the back somehow? Probably not. Billy Q would need to catch Cub Swanson, I believe, with a big shot to get him in a compromised spot and then have success on the ground. I don't think it's a high probability of Billy Q being able to completely wrestle fuck Cub. I just don't think that happens here. So if we're looking at striking, you look at the level of offensive boxing of both and tell me who's better. It's easily Cub Swanson. So if we're having most likely a more so boxing fight with Cub Swanson's quality grappling defensive abilities and Billy Q not being an elite tier wrestler, Cub Swanson's striking is cleaner. Cub Swanson is faster. Cub Swanson is more accurate. And I would say Cub Swanson with his hands is more powerful. There's less fat on the punches of Cub Swanson. Watch Billy Q throw punches. It's a wider guard and it's more looping shots, right? And these looping shots come slower than precise punches coming straight. Now, if a looping shot hits you, yeah, it's going to hurt. But at the end of the day, Cub Swanson is a crafty boxer. Bro, he used to train with Tim Bradley in boxing. Tim Bradley at one point was a highly touted welterweight. I think Cub Swanson, regardless of his age, is in a matchup against somebody who, yes, is not in his 40s. Billy Q's younger at 36, but Billy Q does seem to be 1 foot out the door with fighting. I know he's got a gym that he owns now in Tampa, right? So it seems that maybe things are lining towards the coaching role. I think he's going to give it a hard go. I think Billy Q is going to give it all he's got. But I don't think he's adapted enough in his overall skill set to beat a guy that's been here for this damn long and doing well. Now, Billy Q is a notable guy in the UFC. Both guys trading wins and losses. If you look, Billy Q, like I said, last time out, I mean, disappointing, right? Loses to Yusuf Zalal coming in, but Yusuf Zalal is actually a really good prospect. And that's forgivable. On short notice, it's like, all right, Zalal's actually got trending potential upwards. Not necessarily the same case can be said about Billy Q. Beat Damon Jackson in a gritty fight. Damon Jackson just retired, but decent win. Edson Barboza absolutely dusted him. Hernandez wins that fight. That was impressive. He beat Hernandez. That was cool. Shane Burgos beats him, but to be honest, he was close with Shane Burgos. He gave Shane Burgos a hard fight in 2021, but listen to what I'm saying. 2021? Bro, we're about to hit 2025. This fight is over 3 years ago against Burgos. Him giving, a top 15 guy a real run for his damn money. Beat Benitez, beat Gavin Tucker, beat Kyle Nelson, but now we're looking too far back, okay? Inside the UFC, 6-4, right? On the opposite side, you got Cub Swanson, who's literally been under the, banner of not necessarily the UFC the whole time, but with WEC, the same parent company, forever. 14-10 in the UFC. Yes, again, a guy trading wins and losses. It's just been something that's been happening for both of these guys. But Andre Philly split decision that could have went towards the side of Cub Swanson. Granted, the Hakeem Dawodu fight, the argument could be made in the opposite. Beat Hakeem, though. Tried to drop to 135, made a big mistake, got wrecked by the king of leg kicks, Martinez. You can't look at that and compare it to this fight. Darren Elkins win, that's badass. Giga Chikadze is a freaking monster. Beat Daniel Pineda, who's crafty. Outdogged Kron Gracie when Kron Gracie at one point had some fight in him. Then you can see a Shane Burgos split decision loss. Funny, right? Close decision losses on both fronts for the Shane Burgos opponents. I think Cub Swanson is going to win this fight in a competitive fashion. I'm saying Cub Swanson on a close decision. Now, the hometown robbery could be in effect. Wouldn't blow my mind if it's close enough, and then Tampa, they give it to their own. We haven't had a UFC here in so damn long. But either way, I think that Cub Swanson should win at the end of it. At plus 135, too, he's the underdog. I don't know. I don't think he should be the underdog here. I think these lines should be flipped. Weird. Minus 155 for Billy Q. Now looking towards an over, probably going into the later stage. Interesting, right? The over is at minus 115. I think there's a good chance it goes over. Now, granted, if Cub Swanson get some big combinations flowing, and maybe Billy Q really isn't full-time in the fight game anymore, and my suspicions are even more prominent than I'm expecting, okay, maybe Cub Swanson puts him away. But more than likely, I think Billy Q's a tough dude who's got a good chin, who can sit there and scrap, and he's at home. I think he's going to give it all he has. I think this is his final fight, probably. And I think it's going to be a fight of the night type matchup with Cub Swanson where he loses against a veteran and a guy that has been fighting under, the UFC and the parent company with the WEC forever, right? He's taking on a true OG, and I think he loses in a war. So Cub Swanson for the win. Surprisingly, he's the dog. I know he's 41, but he's not like most 41-year-olds, okay? He's been active over the past 2 years. He's fought 3 times in the past 2 years. Past 2 in the past year and 3 months. This is now fight 3. He's fighting a good amount. For 41, that's good activity rate. And I think he's going to beat Billy Quarantillo. Main event of the evening. We got Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. If you guys haven't, smash the likes. And if you're new, subscribe. I'm going to be picking Colby Covington to pull off the upset over Joaquin Buckley. Now, before some of you guys freak out, hear me out. What pressure wrestler has Joaquin Buckley beaten? What pressure wrestler has he really faced? You can say, at middleweight, he fought Albert Duraev, but Duraev is not Colby Covington pressure nor gas tank. And this is 170 pounds. It's a completely different weight class. Colby Covington, when he is on point, has relentless pressure, okay? He's got an amazing gas tank. He's got good striking volume, and he has quality wrestling, a level of wrestling that, in a sense, Buckley has only seen once before. If you dig back earlier in his career, he got absolutely dominated in wrestling by Logan Storley, who was high level, collegiate wrestling game. Not the same style as Colby for MMA wrestling, but a factor that when Buckley took on a high level wrestler like that, he was on his butt. He was on his back. He was controlled. Now, that's years ago, and in a sense, it's irrelevant to this fight, but it is something worth noting as far as comparison goes, because right now, Joaquin Buckley is surging up the ranks at 170 pounds. But look at the opponents for a second and then compare it to this opposition against Colby Covington. Joaquin Buckley versus Wonderboy, right? The antithesis of Colby Covington is Wonderboy Thompson in both personality and fighting style. You have a kickboxer who likes to strike from distance, stay on that bicycle and move and pick his shots well, okay? Complete opposite to pressure in your face, dirty boxing, takedowns, control, outdog you, Colby Covington. He beats him by knockout, but I think people forget a lot of folks scored the first 2 rounds for Wonderboy in that fight, and Buckley got the comeback KO there. Fight before, he fought Nursultan Riziboyev, who's okay, but absolutely lacks in wrestling, and Buckley was timing takedowns and using his wrestling in that fight. Now, in the fight before that, he took out Vicente Luque, and that one was pretty impressive, right? Vicente Luque, at one point notable, and like Buckley just beat the hell out of him from top position, but I have said my piece on Luque all last week. I know he ended up winning the fight, but the dude had a legit brain bleed, and I question his durability completely, and that's why he froze so bad in that fight. And then you dig before, decision win against Alex Morono only a year ago. Colby Covington, I understand. A year ago was his last fight, a little over a year ago. I guess no, a little under a year ago, Leon Edwards. He lost. He looked gun shy. It was the most uncharacteristic Colby Covington performance we have ever seen. Normally, Colby is that in-your-face, nonstop pressure. In this fight, he's fighting on the back foot. He's trying to kickbox from range and catch Leon Edwards. Now, he claimed that he broke his foot early in the fight with a high kick attempt. I did find the high kick, and it exists, right? You can go back and rewatch the first round. You'll see it. I don't know if it looks like a break. He claims it was. He posted photos of an x-ray. Maybe that's what completely threw off the performance, because it was a very uncharacteristic Colby Covington. It didn't even look like him. It had me believing, damn, is he fully washed? I had the thought process that he was washed, and even before really looking into things today for this fight, I thought to myself, Joaquin Buckley surging forward, Colby Covington looked bad with Leon, but then you go back and you see him taking Leon down late and winning the 5th round, doing well. I mean, he still put a statement out there to the rest of the division with how that fight ended, that he's still here, regardless of the claimed injury of, a foot break. And then you look at the fight before, he outdogged Jorge Masvidal. Say what you want about Masvidal. Masvidal's a slick power striker who's dangerous, and Colby Covington was in his face the whole time. Typical dirty fighting style, making it rough and tumble and hard to deal with. And then fight before that, he went tit for tat with Kamaru Usman and nearly won. I feel like Colby Covington is a guy that right now is kind of being completely forgotten about and slept on. And I think in some senses, it's because of how bad his performance was against Leon Edwards for most of the rounds. But on top of it, it's also just for most of the fans' disdain for his personality at this point. But when you see through the shtick and the persona, right, and you look at what Colby Covington is, he is a hardworking guy that absolutely has one of the best gas tanks in the welterweight division. He's absolutely a high-tier wrestler, the highest-tier wrestler that Buckley has ever faced in his UFC career. And how can you be confident Buckley's going to knock Covington out? The one time that Colby Covington was knocked out, it was a tit-for-tat war with Kamaru Usman in their first fight where he was dropped in round number 5. He got his jaw broken, and he still was able to get right back up to his feet without a wobble when the referee stepped in. So when I look at that, I say, Buckley's never gone 5 rounds, though. We've never seen Joaquin Buckley go 5 rounds in the UFC. This is the first big spot for him where he's going to get tested to the breaking point, I think. How's he going to look in 4 and 5? How's he going to pace himself for a 5-round fight? Now, respect to Buckley. He hasn't been a guy that I have serious questions around his gas tank, right? It's not like, oh, well, he completely gassed out against X fighter recently and looked horrible in the 3rd round. He was able to knock out Wonderboy in round number 3, and he definitely carries power later into the fights. It's just the worry of a different style that he's facing, not someone that's going to play his game. A lot of these other fighters play his game because, at welterweight, let's be fair, Buckley has been able to dictate the pace of fights and, for the most part, where fights take place. Now, he did lose the first 2 rounds on a lot of scorecards, maybe 1-1 with Wonderboy, and then for the round 3 comeback KO. But ultimately, he had the wrestling advantage in that fight, which was an X factor there. And I think that is what led him to the devastating overhand punch. He does not have a wrestling threat that's viable to bring to the table against Colby Covington. There is not evidence that Buckley can out-wrestle a Colby Covington. On the opposite front, you could say there is slight evidence that Colby Covington could get Buckley down. This could be a frustrating, in-your-face, pressure, Colby Covington, embrace the grind type of fight. I'm sure Buckley has some striking moments. He might catch Colby. Colby is not a powerful puncher, but he's a good volume puncher, and his gas tank is legit. I do not know for sure if Colby Covington still has it, okay? How can we know for sure? But I am not going to assume that the Leon Edwards first few rounds of that fight is going to be the level that he brings here. I expect him to be better. And he still finished that fight strong in round 5. And I feel as though the momentum is going to trend from what we saw in round 5 as opposed to what we saw in 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to go with Colby Covington to win a gritty and grind-heavy decision over Joaquin Buckley and what's going to be a massive upset. It's crazy to see the odds, and I disagree with them. Though Joaquin Buckley has looked good, how can I sit here and say, yeah, he deserves a tag of minus 265 against a multiple-time title challenger whose last fight was a championship fight? Now, I understand Colby did technically take this fight on short notice, but I think you are fooling yourself if you don't believe Colby was training to fill in, to try and fight maybe Shavkat, right, for an interim belt. But when he found out that interim belt was not there, he wasn't going to take it. And he didn't want to fight Ian Gary because maybe Gary didn't have the hype at the time. But if Colby wins this one, I promise you, we're going to see Colby Covington versus Ian Gary as a fight night main event or maybe a special feature 5-round co-main event on a pay-per-view in 2025. And I feel like the stars are aligning for it to happen. Plus 225 for Buckley. The odds are going to have you fearful and picking the other side. But look at the fight as it is, not as the odds tell you. Colby is 1,000% in this fight, and Buckley has a big question mark around his wrestling ability against somebody to the tutelage and level of wrestling, especially with his cardio on top of it, of Colby Covington. And that is why I'm going for Colby. I'm going for Colby. I think he's going to find a way. Now, as far as this fight going into the later stage for an over 1.5, we got minus 150. I do think it's live to get into those later stages and be a fight that goes over a round and a half. I'm picking Colby Covington, guys. I'm going for the MAGA man himself. I'm going for the self-proclaimed Donald Trump's favorite fighter. But unfortunately for Colby, Trump said it was Habib, man. But listen, Colby, I won't flack you here. We're picking you. I'm riding with Team Colby to make the welterweight division great again. You know why he's going to make it great again? Because if he wins, he gets to fight Ian Gary, and that fight will be absolutely sick. And I think that we are living in the universe where that comes to fruition. So Colby Covington by decision over Joaquin Buckley is going to be my pick. And the final selling point, before I forget, Buckley was preparing for Ian Gary, who is a rangy kickboxer. Say what you want about Colby stepping in on short notice. Buckley was preparing for a completely different style. Now he has a pressure, in-your-face, volume-punching wrestler. The whole fight is different. It's a hard matchup, and styles do make the fights ultimately, and that is why the pick is Colby Covington. Those are my picks for UFC Tampa, the card that's coming to my neck of the woods. But as you guys know, I'll be streaming the full card right here. So tune into Saturday's Fight Companion. This past Fight Companion was incredible. We got over 112,000 live views. So I just want to say thank you, everybody who tunes into the Fight Companions and supports and just tunes into all the content throughout the week. I got mad love for each and every one of you. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. We're getting close to 42,000, so I'm pretty damn hype. I appreciate you guys for watching. Smash the likes here. Let me know what you thought of the picks, especially the main event pick. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are about my Colby Covington call. I want to see if the Colby army is here or if there is a lot of love for Joaquin Buckley. Thanks for watching, guys. I love you all. W's in the comments. You got nothing to say. I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.